I am joined now by Patrick Bet-David. He is the host of the PBD podcast, of course, part owner as well of the New York Yankees, as well as the founder of Valuetainment. Patrick, thanks so much for making the time.
It's great to be on.
So perhaps I just want to start out here. I was at the debate last week in Atlanta, and even amongst Democrats who were there, who were on the floor, I mean, they're really conceding that it was a disastrous night for President Biden. But I want to ask you, because there was the likes of Gavin Newsom on the floor, Jasmine Crockett, like all of these younger kind of up-and-coming Democrats who a lot of people are floating would be a potential replacement for President Biden. From your perspective, though, why is it that the Democrats, it seems, are kind of so close-minded in wanting to stick with Joe Biden, someone who, when put up against former President Trump, at least the polls are suggesting right now, would not fare very well?
Well, he still fares better than Newsom, than Whitmer, than Pritzker, than Pete, than Kamala, than a lot of people. If you looked at the poll, they put them against each other, and he still has a 1, 2, 3 point lead better than them, although that's not a big lead. It's unfair to the other guys because, when it comes down to even, some people will say, well, look at FDR, one of the greatest Democratic presidents we ever had. And look at, Governor Abbott, even he's in a wheelchair, FDR in a wheelchair in many cases. Look how great of a job he did. What's the difference here? The job of a president is to convey a message and to give confidence. And he couldn't do it. But to me, I think there's different camps. There's one camp, which are the sincere people that think Biden's going to win and they have his back and they don't want anybody else to change, right? They want it to be Biden. Great. Then there's the camp that they don't want Biden, but they have to show that they're united up front and they're unified publicly, even though privately they want to replace him. And then you have the third camp, which is the ones that are, no, we don't want Biden, and they're publicly loud about it, right? Everybody falls in one of those categories on the Democratic side. I've never seen a time where Jake Tapper is talking to one of the senators yesterday, and it's on CNN, and he's asking him questions. What do you mean he's running? You can't tell me he did a good job. And the gentleman says, I think it's Kuhn, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. He is the greatest president we've ever had in my lifetime. Even as a Democrat, to say that you're saying he's a better president than Obama or Bill Clinton, see, that's gaslight. And then when you hear what Mark Cuban says on Twitter, there's a lot of those things going on. I just think this is a very tough time for them, because if I'm a Democrat and I'm wanting to have somebody that I can get behind, they don't have a long time right now to replace them. It's time for them to replace them. How they do that, there's many creative ways to do it.
And so what do you think people who have kind of, I guess, a left of center point of view, who don't want to vote for President Biden because they saw what happened, on debate night, and they're concerned that that's kind of an indication of how the next 4 years are going to go, but they also don't want to vote for someone like former President Trump simply because, he doesn't share very many of their viewpoints. Where do they go? Do you think they're considering someone like an RFK? I mean, it seems as if a large portion of the country right now is, I'll use kind of the word politically homeless, as Joe Walsh told me.
Well, that's a good point you're making, but here's what you got to be thinking about. When you think about RFK, what is his number one thing he's running on? If I was to ask you, what's RFK's number one thing he's running? The average voter may say, COVID, Fauci, right? Mm-hmm. That's what he's running on. He wrote that whole case against Fauci, the book that God knows how many millions of copies it sold. So that's his number one. But if you ask the average voter, what are their top 5 issues today? You got economy, you got immigration, you got Roe v. Wade, you got, wars, preventing, you got those issues. So RFK has to be able to present and adjust his campaign to relate to the left to get him in. And would he be willing to sit there and say, hey, even though my message has been anti-establishment for the last 18, 24, 36 months, I'm willing to work with you guys. Do you truly think the establishment is going to trust an RFK who left publicly the Democratic Party and humiliated them and went to that side? I don't think that's going to happen. Do I think the left or the right wants to see an RFK there? Meaning if the left supports RFK, it hurts the Democratic candidate. The right sees RFK, he takes away from people that on the right are not happy with what Fauci did with COVID. So they wouldn't mind the RFK type. But no, I don't think that's going to be I think RFK needs a creative campaign strategy team on the back end that can come up with an incredible. This is maybe the greatest opportunity RFK's ever had, but they need some grassroots creative marketing storytelling to be able to go out there and get this message across the board to people. I haven't seen it yet. I know he had a very big day on Twitter on the debate night, 10 million views.
All right, we'll leave our conversation there. Patrick Bet David, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.